let's see. We've got the big headline: online leak, public shares teen chopping accused, pics. Children's Authority sends privacy warning, and I think anyone who was sharing those photos, they need to get some licks, please. First,
Very
to begin, it's
insensitive.
the person who did the crime is a child, and then why would you want to? I mean, what sort of pleasure are you getting from, like how can you feel good sharing that stuff?
Some people, because of the technology, they're treated like a toy. I can do it, so let's put it on for everybody to see, because
I
they show the
don't
woman
want
with
that
her,
in my
with her
inbox.
severed hand.
I don't want that
They
in
don't
my
really-
inbox.
They don't care about that.
What
They
makes
don't
you
care
think that
about
I
that.
want to see that?
That's
Suppose
why-
I wake up in the middle of the night to check my phone, and I see this, sleep in my eye, and I see this. How is that supposed to make me feel?
Just because
That's why I
they can
delete.
do it.
Some things I don't even entertain. I delete it
Yes,
right away.
yeah.
But I think this is very insensitive because there's been a breach of confidentiality of patient here and doctor, as it were, or nurse in this particular case, or whoever the medical
has to be
practitioner.
somebody in the vicinity, of
Exactly. I mean, why would you want to do that? I mean,
Because
if you
they can do it.
but
That's all.
to what end, Mr.
It's
Kerr?
obscene.
What's the result of
It's a
doing it?
macabre kind of the mind that people have. We all must know what's happening. And I think they even showed a picture of the youngster, the 15,
The boy.
16-year-old. Yes.
That is not helping the cause. I mean, you should be praying or something, but to actually take a photo of that and people need sometimes to stop and ask, if that was my mother or that was my sister, or if that was me, would you like someone to do that to you? This is a case we it's unfortunate. The young boy is going through what he's going through, and the mother has chosen to cover his sins, as it were, with love, and not press any charges. Don't give any report to the police, as it were. And she loves her son. This is her son. They're gonna get through this. And you decide now with your insensitive, sensitive self. Because you are in the space where this is all happening. You want to show everybody that, you saw it. And I mean, come on. Where does that emanate from? Where that come from?
Whether it's the police, whether it's the army, there's always somebody there with a camera.
Want to be hero. Was it trying to be hero? Trying to become famous?
Well,
That's so insensitive.
Remember, these things are anonymous. Huh? No name is attributed to it.
No, but you could trace that. Right, Jesse? You could trace that. You go and...
But who's going to do that?
Well, if it comes down to litigation, they'll source it. We've seen email gates and all that. They can get the archives. But I'm just thinking that whoever did that is very unfortunate. It's insensitive. Whether you're trying to be famous or brag, I mean, this is not a case like that. The mother is deciding, listen, it's my son, and when I come out of this, the other thing is,
but I don't think that's the wisest thing to do.
What?
Even the father, he would know exactly what happened because he saw the mother and the boy running away and so on. So I don't know. I suppose they're waiting.
You mean pardon him? In terms of pardoning him?
But this is it. I don't think they should do that.
Okay, well.
But I think because the mother's still in the hospital and so on,
yes.
Let it ride for a while.
Exactly. But and then the other part of it is when you put that photo out there, would she be able to use her hand? And to have these photos out there, I mean, insensitive anyway.
Mm-hmm. But the bottom line, though, is that the pictures of the youngster that have been circulating, that's illegal. That's against the law. As far as I'm aware, you're not supposed to be sharing images of children who are victims of crime or who have committed acts of crime. On the line with us is Senior Attorney at Law, Martin George. Good morning to you, Martin George.
Yes, hi. Good morning to you, Jesse.
Yes.
Good morning,
Mr. George.
Good morning, Edison.
Your Honor.
Trinidad and Tobago.
Before we dig into to our substantive topic, could you just clarify, is it against the law to be sharing pictures of children who are victims of crime or perpetrators of crime?
Well, the thing is, Jesse, I heard you say that, and I was immediately surprised because I don't know if it is that you have information that nobody else has, because I think so far even the police have not been able to determine that the alleged individual is the perpetrator of a crime. The point is, while we may all make assumptions and sometimes even logical assumptions. The fact that the police have not been able to make any headway clearly means that in the absence of some definite proof or admission or confession, I think they are erring on the side of caution.
Okay.
And hence the reason why the individual was released. So then it spins it into the question of whether it is then illegal to, share the photograph in that context.
Yeah.
Of course, there are privacy concerns, which are a different aspect, which would be either under your civil or constitutional rights. But if you're talking criminal law, then if it is that the person has not been charged with any crime or there's no definite evidence out in the public domain thus far to suggest that the person is actually the perpetrator of a crime. As I say, this is separate and apart from what we may think or assume or suspect.
Okay.
The fact remains that as far as the police are concerned, they have not charged the individual yet with any crime.
So that gives them the right, Mr. George, to do that?
No, I'm not saying it gives you the right. Yes, you may ask a specific question as to whether it fell under a criminal act to share the photograph. So therefore, once you're in the realm of criminal law, you have to look at how the law operates strictly.
Well, actually,
I'm not making a moral judgment at all.
It was the
I'm just simply
DPP.
telling you the legal position.
It was the DPP who advised the police not to lay any charges, according to the reports.
Well, I would imagine that this would have been based on the state of the evidence or lack thereof. You see, in circumstances such as that, if there are two persons involved and there isn't any other eyewitness or independent verification of what happened, while I may assume that this was not self-inflicted and therefore if it's only the two of you there in the space, then I may assume, and I say it may be a logical assumption, that it's the other individual who perpetrated the act upon you. If it is that person does not confess, and if it is that I don't want to give evidence to say, look, this is the person who did it, then it puts the police in a bit of a bind in terms of moving forward with proof. I mean, it doesn't stop them from charging at the end of the day, but if it is that you suspect that, look, there's little chance of success of a prosecution, then that's where it becomes a judgment call of the DPP to make that decision.
Thank you very much for the clarification on that point, Martin George.
It was a pleasure.
As you mentioned, the police are certainly in a bit of a conundrum right now, and we were speaking with senior police officials last week who indicated that this whole issue of picking a commissioner and a deputy commissioner is impacting the morale of the officers in the service, not just the first division officers, but also the second division, what we call the rank and file. Everything that's been happening, and then we had the laying of the report by the Special Select Committee of Parliament looking into the matter, who's come up with the conclusion that, well, the process is very flawed. So where does that leave us? What does that mean?
Okay. Well, the first thing I just want to touch upon is that I saw reported in the media that there was something referred to as a minority report that was laid. And the first thing that came to mind was the movie, Minority Report.
That's right.
I was wondering if that was the basis of the thinking behind this, because when one looks at the legislation which deals with the setting up of a Special Select Committee of Parliament, it doesn't seem to envisage any such thing as a minority report. And, this was a committee comprised of 6 individuals. So therefore, if it is that you had 4 who were of one view and maybe 2 members who may have held a different view, at the end of the day, the report signed off by the 4 becomes the report. So, while it may have value in terms of, what the 2 members who signed that report, that may represent their views, but in terms of legally, it's of little or no effect, whatsoever. So I just want to, make that clear. So moving forward, we need to understand that there's really only one report from a legal and legislative point of view, which would be the report signed off by 4 out of 6 persons, right? So that's your majority, that's 66%. So therefore, that's the report. It's only one report, right? So in that regard, the findings are quite interesting, and I think one of the aspects that is important is the fact that the committee was of the view that the entire process still needs to be reviewed, because I think they were cognizant of the difficulties both with the legislation and at times, the various interpretations which could have been put on the judgment of Justice Raj Kumar in the Haridat Miraj case. So therefore, I think they also saw that, this was not as simple as it may have appeared on the surface. So that's one of the recommendations. Of course, they were also of the view that the Commission ought not to have participated as intimately as it did in the early stages of the selection process, which would have been the first 2 stages, which would have been the initial interviews and the role play and the assessment centers. You would see that the Express newspaper did identify 3 of the commissioners who actually participated in that part of it. Fortunately, I was not one of them because I had a different view. But notwithstanding that, the fact that you had 3 persons participating, the committee felt that, look, that was not how it ought to have been done. Of course, that is in itself still open to, I guess, legal interpretation as to, how you view the effect of Justice Rajkumar's judgment juxtaposed against the wording of the legislation as to how much involvement or control the commission would have. So it's not simply a black and white issue to say, well, look, you were wrong to do this, or you were, in error, or that kind. This is the view of the committee, and this is how they saw it, they interpreted it, and of course, you accept and respect that. But you also bear in mind that there are legal opinions which may tell you a different view. So at the end of the day, we need clarity and we need some simplification to the entire process.
But $3 million later, Mr. George, you all took a lot of time. Over the last 2 years, we've been talking about this issue. $3 million later, probably more investment than that. And how could you didn't get it right? Let me use that. How could would the system still be flawed? $3 million later, you all took a lot of time. I could reference conversation we had in the past, and the process and everything. You were very meticulous. But how could it be now that the report's saying, and $3 million later, a lot of time invested, a lot of intellectuals behind this process, and it was flawed?
Right, and the thing is, the fundamental challenge that everyone has in this regard is the legislative underpinning. The legislation, by seeking to so insulate the commission from, I guess, the control or interference or dictates of the legislators and the parliament, I think made it too overlaid, cumbersome and burdensome. So in attempting to follow the dictates of the legislation, which you must seek to do because you are guided by that, it does involve a very lengthy and cumbersome process, which I think is unnecessarily cumbersome. That's my personal view, and it's a view I think that has been shared by many others, because it's actually more difficult in Trinidad and Tobago to appoint a commissioner of police than it is to appoint a chief justice, a prime minister, a president. So there's no reason why this one post must be so overlaid and overly cumbersome.
But they may have originally thought that they wanted to safeguard the process, to make it as free and as transparent, or to not allow any sort of corrupting influences to come in. But eventually, all of those checks and balances seem to be piling up and tumbling up upon each other.
Well, the thing is, it's a case of maybe, it's too multi-layered in the sense that, yes, you want to provide the protections, but you don't want to put so many levels of protection that you end up defeating the ultimate objective. You mustn't lose sight of what your ultimate objective is. And I think that's part of the difficulty. But unless and until the legislation itself is changed, it's what would have to be worked with. And, of course, there's the question of what happens now moving forward.
Well, I was not going to ask that question.
Sorry, go on.
The Police Service Commission selection of DCP is Deodat Dulalchan and Harold Phillips. As a majority decision, is it at the moment standing?
Well, this is the point. Remember, when that nomination came before the Parliament, the joint position of both sides of the House of Parliament was that it ought to be referred to the Special Select Committee. So having done so, the natural process now is that the report of the Special Select Committee has to be laid in Parliament. If that report is accepted, and that requires a simple majority for its acceptance or rejection, if that report is accepted, then you look now at the findings of that report. And then if the findings of that report basically form the conclusion that either the process was flawed, the selection was flawed, I think one of the things they mentioned was that the security vetting was not adequate, then in those circumstances, it's difficult to see how those nominations could be proceeded with.
Mr. George, how do you think that a sidebar, which could morph into something more serious, about the selection of Mr. Dulalchan could be put in jeopardy because of some problems he had? Well, not a problem, but it's turning into a problem now. He became an instant farmer. And the charges have been made that he didn't qualify for the grant of land and that kind of thing.
I'm sorry, what's your question, Edison?
Well, would that affect any kind of further investigation into the recommendation of the Police Service Commission?
Well, the point is we're not even at the stage of even thinking of or considering that. And I mean, because at this stage, it's really now up to the Parliament to decide the way forward. So, of course, if the process has to be done over or restarted or whatever, or maybe continued, then I would imagine that whatever is placed before the Commission would then be given due consideration. Persons would be given the opportunity to make whatever submissions, they could in relation to these issues. But at this point, that's not anything that's before the Commission for consideration.
In the legislation, Mr. George, is there any reference that the candidates should have been perhaps examined by a polygraph test? Is it anywhere there?
It doesn't specify that.
And how did that become part of the narrative, as it were?
I think it was a question posed by one of the members of the Special Select Committee.
Do you think that is necessary?
Well, it's not really for me to say. We basically have to work with what the legislation says. The legislation does not specify that.
I just want to, for the benefit of everyone, just to refresh our memories about that press briefing that was held, the media briefing that was held by members of the committee. Just one more time.
A single final recommendation to urgently review Section 123 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. It's the view of the men and women who sat on this special select committee that this section outlining the process of selecting a police commissioner and his deputy needs to contain, quote, well-defined guidelines for the selection, end quote. The $3.2 million exercise started in September 2017. But the Fitzgerald-Hines chaired committee found the manner in which the entire process was conducted by the Police Service Commission was defective and unreliable. This 41-page report found the assessing of candidates by members of the commission was not what the Constitution intended, and they say there was not full consensus by the Police Service Commission on several key decisions. In January 2018, the Police Service Commission submitted the name of Acting Deputy Commissioner Deodat Dulalchan as a top nominee for the post of commissioner. Public outcry soon arose when certain assertions entered the public domain, chief among them that Mr. Dulalchan was the subject of an investigation of misconduct by the Police Complaints Authority. The matter was then sent before the Special Select Committee. But this committee comprises of 6 persons, and their report presented today also lacks consensus. It does not bear the signatures of opposition members Dr. Rudal Munilal and Ganga Singh.
Not having heard one word from my 2 colleagues about Minority Report, we were all shocked, and I am personally horrified and affronted at the fact that they ran sheepishly and worst behind our backs and submitted a Minority Report.
The opposition duo says they did not see the final document and therefore could not sign it. But checks with the Parliament indicated their 8-page Minority Report did not make it into the official package of documents containing all appendices, as it was not submitted on time. The information unearthed in this Special Select Committee's report would be used by parliamentarians in the motion before the lower house for the appointment of a police commissioner and a deputy. The committee was not mandated to make recommendations. Acting Police Commissioner Stephen Williams is on his 13th extension, which ends on October 1st, and TNT has not had a substantive police commissioner since 2012. Urvashi Tuwarup Narayan, CNC3.
Martin George, as you would have explained earlier, ultimately it is the majority report and not the minority report that will carry sway. And also, it remains to be seen what happens.
I went even further, and I said, from a legal perspective and a legislative perspective, there's only one report.
Yes, yes.
So, Mr. George, the PM giving overtures when he was with the diaspora in London. Yeah, why are you laughing? You pick my brain, so respond. You pick my brain.
I'm listening.
Are you at liberty to can you go there?
Yes, go on, let me hear the question.
Well, because Mr. Dr. Mulal, I think he took issue with that. And nobody, the point is that he said, the PM understands, says that no one applied from the colony, the British from Britain.
One of the things that emerge was and it was something that I think we felt a bit, we found it interesting that there were not more international applicants.
Okay.
And I think that's what the Prime Minister was seeking to allude to. And I mean, I'm not sure that necessarily his reference to that constitutes an interference in the process at all, because the process has been completed.
It's just interesting that he would have made that comment. Is that an indication that we are not an attractive job opportunity?
Well, the thing is, you see, we need to consider how we advertise or, I guess, promote the available positions in the future. If you recall, in relation to the last 2 substantive appointments, which would have been Messrs. Gibbs and Iwatsky, they got preferential contracts which were specifically tailored for them. So therefore, it took it outside the realm of the standard salary grade and terms and conditions of the statute which governs the Commissioner of Police. So therefore, if it is that persons, are made to understand that there would be a willingness to negotiate outside of those parameters, then maybe you might see more interest in terms of, a more diverse field of applicants.
Yeah.
But if it is that people feel that you are constrained by the present terms and conditions as defined by law, then it may not necessarily be so attractive to someone, who may hold a high-profile international position, because most likely it would be a significant step down for you.
I was just wondering whether the memory of the Gibbs and Iwatsky debacle may have been a deterrent to anyone international applying for the job.
The thing is, in circumstances such as that, you must understand and appreciate that, look, you hold office subject to, if you understand me,
yes,
certain things. You think even in terms of, New York, where you had, Bratton, at one point he was in charge of the police service, so the point is, it's not necessarily something that you think that it's something that is yours for life. Look, in Jamaica, they called upon their commissioner to resign earlier this year,
yes,
and they have a new commissioner. So, and Barbados had problems last year with the commissioner. So the thing is, it's not something that you could ever think that it's yours for life.
Yes.
So, it's part of it's part of the course.
Thank you so much for giving us some time this morning, Martin George. We
It's
appreciate your
pleasure.
analysis as always.
Have a great morning.
Thank
You
All
too.
the best.
All right, and that's it for this, the first hour of the Breakfast Roundtable here on Sky.
Edison Carr, Jesse May Venture, and Dr. Wayne Haywood on the Breakfast Roundtable on Sky 99.5 FM.